Hi, and welcome to the Vocal Fries Podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Megan Figueroa.
And I'm Carrie Gillen.
Baby Yoda.
Baby! Yes. I cannot get over how much I love Baby Yoda. It's so wild.
Well, I'm kind of embarrassed because I can't speak to all of Baby Yoda because I don't actually watch The Mandalorian yet because we're waiting until it all comes out to get Disney Plus trial. Do you watch it?
Yes, my brother-in-law gave us access.
Oh, bless his heart. Aaron?
I know. Yes,
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Well, no, thank you, Aaron. You're not helping me. But, okay, so you're watching it, and...
Yes.
And so this is not Yoda as a baby. This is just another Yoda species.
Well, we don't know for sure, but
thing.
Unless there's some kind of, like, reincarnation, no, it has to be a different Yoda creature. And also, there's a whole thing about whether the Yoda species has a name.
Mm-hmm.
There is technically one that was introduced in a book, I think, but the books are no longer canon, and so there's no name.
In a book, not in a comic.
Maybe it was a comic. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's no longer canon.
Okay. So we don't know what the species is called.
Mm-mm.
And we don't know if Baby Yoda has a name yet.
It's just called the Child.
The Child. Okay. And so everyone is near pissed off about what Baby Yoda baby.
It's like the episode in Sunrise Bay when I stole my own baby.
Where is Bebe's chamber?
Oh, she has no idea the toll a baby can take on its mother. You do realize the baby is crying.
Either way, great progress for Bebe.
You're Bebe, Jocelyn, and an artistic cradle robber. I am not.
So, Baby Yoda, everyone's in a tizzy about what Baby Yoda would speak when it finally speaks. If it ever speaks.
Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling it's probably going to speak. I mean, if the child is able to use the Force, spoiler there, but it does, then surely it should be able to speak at some point. I mean, I know those two things are not actually related, but it just feels like they're setting it up such that he or she or it will be able to speak.
Okay. To call on the Force. But a lot of that happens internally, right? Internal dialogue to call the Force.
I have no idea how the Force works. I mean, all I know is you concentrate a lot and then a rock raises. I don't know.
Okay, this is getting too philosophical. Back to language, which is not philosophical at all. Just kidding.
It's a different kind of philosophical question. Yeah, so one of our former guests, Lisa Davidson, wrote an article for Slate about just this question, like, what would Baby Yoda's language be like?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people just assume that the baby will have what the same syntax that Yoda did, which was complicated to describe.
Yeah.
It's like predicate. You put the predicate at the beginning, sort of, and then you have your subject, and then you have your modals.
That's right. Yoda does have like the shoulds at the end.
Yeah, so the auxiliaries stay low or at the end.
Whoa. You're talking trees here. This is
I know, that's why I switched. So for those who understand the trees, you know what I said. Essays at the end if you don't know the trees. And there's no shame in not knowing the trees.
There is no shame.
But yeah, so basically everything after the auxiliary is spoken at the beginning of the sentence instead.
Mm-hmm.
Usually. There are some counterexamples to this pattern, but, most of the time, that's the pattern. So, what's a good example?
Listen to me, you should.
Right. Perfect. Yes, perfect. So, listen to me. It's the predicate there. Then you have your subject, you, and then you have your auxiliary. Yeah.
Your should. Yes.
So... okay, so will Baby Yoda speak like that? Well, it kind of depends on a bunch of different factors, which Lisa does mention.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know if there's like some preloaded syntax into this baby's head, in which case, yeah, I guess it would.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it more like a human,
mm-hmm.
which doesn't have like that level of preloading. Like, it just couldn't.
Right.
We just don't.
Yeah.
Then it'll acquire whatever it's around, and that's this basic, which is
what is it? Galactic Basic? Is that
Galactic Basic?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the lingua franca, and it sounds like English to us,
right?
But whether or not it actually is English is another issue. But whatever.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point as a developmentalist here, that the child will develop whatever is around them, and that's true if it's going to work like humans.
Right.
Human children develop whatever is around them. I didn't know that this was kind of a contentious thing, because I think that maybe just some people don't think, like, have no reason to think about this. But of course, if like you're born to two people that speak Spanish, say, the reason why you would speak Spanish is because you're around it. Like, if you happen to not then be around those two Spanish speakers, you're not going to develop Spanish if you are suddenly around Chinese speakers.
Yeah, I think most people don't realize this until they either think about it carefully for even just a few minutes, but most people just don't, because it's not really part of their day-to-day existence. No. Or if you take a linguistics class, it's like one of the very first things we talk about is like, look, environment matters. Like, we're not preloaded with English. No. Otherwise, English would never change.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're not really meaning that English is preloaded into everyone, but what a pretentious thought that would be by English speakers, that English would be preloaded.
Right. Into anybody, if they don't really stop and think about it, just assume that, yeah, like a lot of what we learn is not really learned. It's just already there.
I mean, if only that were so easy. But then I actually don't mean that, because it's kind of our brains are a miracle. It's amazing what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're definitely, if we're preloaded with anything, it's not that big. More like, pay attention to human sounds.
Yeah.
Because we do that right away.
Yeah, this human is making a sound, and that human has my food. So I gotta pay attention to that human. Again, it gets really philosophical, which is another thing that a lot of people don't realize until they start fighting about it with people. They're like, oh, I didn't realize I had so many thoughts about this.
Yeah. And these are things that, like, actually linguists do argue about.
Yeah,
and so,
absolutely.
Like, there is a lot of, like, play within what must be there. We just know that it can't be this maximalist thing. So, So if Baby Yoda does come preloaded with this predicate first syntax, all that says is, oh, he's not like a human. He's got a different brain. It doesn't say anything about humans.
Yes, that'll be an important thing to remember.
Yes.
This comes
so
about.
Let's see what happens if the baby speaks, which I strongly suspect will happen.
You gotta wonder if writers are like watching this all play out and how that interacts with what they're gonna do with this.
Oh no, they've already written it. It's done.
Oh, it's done?
They're written it. It's written.
Oh, this is like okay. So once it's done, right? The Mandalorian's done.
Well, I mean, I don't know. They might have more seasons. But
okay.
My guess is this is going to play out. This is already going to play out.
Okay. All right.
Because supposedly this leads into the next movie.
Oh, the one coming out like soon?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So I don't want to spoil, even though I don't even know if it's true, but I don't want to accidentally spoil it. Okay. But yeah, supposedly there's like a connection. So
okay. All right. So let's put Baby Yoda to sleep right now. He needs a little nap. Ultimately, very cute.
So cute. I can't get over how cute. It's amazing. It's like tugging at my heartstrings.
Well, that's one thing that I never usually suggest anyone go seek anything on the internet. But Baby Yoda memes are pretty great. Indigenous Baby Yoda? Yoda
is my favorite.
Yoda, yeah.
When I was typing to find the Slate article, actually, I accidentally typed yoga.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's just, like, muscle memory.
Yeah,
so.
Yep.
Anyway.
So
somebody tweeted about the whole pronouncing names correctly conversation that's been going on. Okay, so this person mentioned that every time there's, like, a conversation around pronouncing names correctly as a social justice thing, So they become very self-conscious because they're deaf, and they probably pronounce the names differently than a hearing person would. And so I thought we should probably mention this.
Yeah.
This is a complication to the story that the conversation we've had so far. So
Right. Yeah, it's not a straightforward pronounce names correctly type of thing, and we're really glad. I mean, it wasn't directed at us, but I'm really glad that this person said something because it's really important, and I would definitely want to make that point to everyone that that's something to consider. I
mean, I've tried to say we should try to pronounce names, as closely to correctly as we possibly can, given the constraints of our phonological system or the sounds that we have.
Yeah, we've mentioned that before, but we want to be, I think it's important, since we have a platform, to be as direct as we can in that, a lot of people, because, again, we're just not used to hearing about deaf or hard of hearing people or even talking about them, that we directly point out that this is going to be a thing that will affect them and how they pronounce things or don't. Yeah, absolutely, to the best of your capacity. Because, again, even so, in some situations, I can't trill my R. But other times I can't. I'm gonna try really hard for you though.
Yeah, the triller is hard. Yeah, I can do it sometimes, but it's really hard in the middle of a sentence, if I just say the name in isolation, usually I can do it. But in a whole sentence, mm-mm.
And this goes back to, just to highlight what we mean when we say to the best of your capacity kind of thing. So someone else tweeted that we weren't descriptivists because you were talking about how you had asked someone to pronounce your name correctly and they ended up not. And it was a professor that you had, and you knew he had the sounds in his sound inventory. So that's the big point. Carrie knew that he could pronounce her name correctly. He just did not.
I mean, I get that the spelling really primes the ka.
Yeah.
Pronunciation. If it's a linguist, I will say, just pretend it's spelled K-E. Then you'll get the right pronunciation.
This person had Kari and Carrie, and they were just no, I'm not gonna respect this person's wishes. But yeah. Anyway, so I think the moral of the story is everything is super nuanced.
Yeah.
We're not trying to step back anything we said, more adding the nuance to it.
Yeah.
Truly is what we're trying to do.
And then today we are talking about Australian Indigenous languages.
Yay!
And it was such a fun conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Me too. It's so good. So
all right, so enjoy.
Like this show and want to make your own? Let me tell you about Anchor. It's free, and they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And now you can even add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless for what you can create, whether it's music analysis, your own radio show, or something the world's never heard before. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Today we're excited to have Ebony Joachim. She is a living languages regionally based trainer and delivers training to support language revitalization across Australia. Ebony is a Yorta Yorta woman from Shepparton and is very passionate about language revitalization. Thank you so much for being here with us, Ebony.
Not a problem.
So excited to have you. I'm just not I haven't traveled much in my life, so I always think it's so cool. You're on Friday. We're on Thursday.
Yes.
We're on Thursday over here.
It is Friday here today.
Yeah, we always have to comment about that whenever we talk to someone from your area.
I know. Yeah. Very big time difference.
It's a huge time difference, but thank you for making time to talk with us. Yeah, so we just actually did an episode on Maori.
Oh,
So I'm really glad that we're continuing with this kind of like language revitalization kind of kick that we've been doing, because it's the year, what is it? 2019 is the year of Indigenous languages, right? Is that?
Yes.
So it's perfect timing.
So yeah, we've been wanting to have someone on to talk about the Australian situation all year long. So we're so excited we finally
finally got there.
got to talk. Yeah, exactly. Let's just start with, what is Living Languages?
So Living Languages is a small organisation that's based in Melbourne, in Australia. We work with several different language groups around the country to help with their revitalisation efforts for their languages. Also maintenance of their languages, the stronger languages of Australia. We provide training to community people that are wanting to, keep their language projects community-based and community-owned and community-led. So we're all about helping communities get the skills they need for their language work and their language projects to help them do it on their own without depending on outside help. It's really cool. Seen a lot of different communities around Australia and work with several different languages of Australia.
You say revitalization versus maintenance. What might be the difference there?
Well, with our maintenance communities that we've worked with in the past, it's usually, the kids are still growing up, learning their language, their mother tongue as their first language, not English. Some maintenance communities have older generations that are still stronger speakers and still know the language quite well. And the younger ones are growing up with language, but more so it's starting to slip away a little bit. So working with them communities, it's all about finding different ways to use language within their community and within any kind of situation within their community. So it's helping them to find different ways to keep the continuation of speaking the language and not depending on the situation, not referring back to English all the time. So then you got the revitalisation situations in Australia where there are still a few speakers left, but majority of the people don't speak their language. So it's all about working with them and stronger speakers of those revitalisation situations and trying to get them into a habit of transferring the knowledge on and, getting speakers more fluent within their communities.
So why is Living Languages so important?
Well, I've been at Living Languages now for 4 years, and I've seen a lot of stuff that we've done over the past, and it's just, I am very passionate about the work that we do. I am definitely all for communities taking hold of their own languages and working towards what they want for their languages and their visions. And I think that's the most important part about us. We don't go in with, our own agendas. We don't go in to tell people what they need to do or what they want to do. It's just all about enhancing their own ideas and their own vision for their languages. And we try to help in any little way that we can to get them to their vision.
Yeah, so I looked at the website and was just looking through what a professional development workshop might look like. And I see the word community a lot, and you've mentioned the word community a lot. What does it mean to whatever people you're going to? What does it mean to them that they can be kind of have the power to keep it within their community? And why is that important?
I think it's important because the language comes from the people and they're the ones that speak it, for one, but also it's about them having the power and having, the support to actually do what they want to do with their own language instead of, some situations there's people that come in and do documentation on the language, but yet it's not shared back with the communities. And they don't really get a say in what the finished product product is of what they're doing in the community. Some are really, really fortunate to have people that will work with them and do absolutely everything the community wants. But yeah, the sense of a community is the people of the language, the people that speak the language. And yeah, I guess in this context, that's what I mean by community.
Do you have some examples of what that's looked like in some of the communities that you've gone to? Like, what have they needed from you, or what have they wanted to learn?
Yeah, okay.
You on the spot.
Okay. So last year, November, I went to a little place called Fitzroy Crossing. It's quite a remote area in Western Australia. We went there to help do some teaching skills, language teaching skills, with a group of people there. And those people, we had about 7 to 11 people come over the 3 days we were there. And they actually come from about 4 different language groups within the area. So, some workshops are actually like, we have several different language groups represented within the workshop, and then there's only the one language group that's represented in the workshop. So it varies quite a lot. When it comes to our professional development workshops, we try to work with as many different language groups or communities we can. In the last one we did in May this year, we had 10 participants. And they all come from different language groups. I think there was two from one, but yeah, there was about 9 different languages represented in that workshop. So yeah, it varies our work and the people that we work with. So yeah, we've always got to be on our toes when it comes to a workshop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it seems like skills that like these would be transferable, right? So since you're going in and like, how can I help you? It doesn't really matter what language it is. It just matters how you can help these people. Yeah,
right? Definitely. That's definitely the thing that we work towards. And it's about, if we can't get to a whole community of speakers, then it's just working with a couple to transfer the skills that they need so they can work within their own community and transfer it on to others, instead of us coming in to do it all. And, it works well because then the community have the confidence and the skills to go and do their work and work within their own communities and build up their own people. So, yeah, it's really nice way to work.
How many different communities have you worked with?
Well, myself, I've been to around 22 different communities in Australia. A couple of them I've been to like 3 to 6 times. So, we only go to communities that invite us to go along and do some skill building with them, which is quite nice. It's as a trainer, it's nice to be invited.
It's kind of hard to go in and train people who don't want to be trained.
Yes, it is. Yes. It certainly is. But yeah, it's I've out of them 22 different locations, I've probably been subjected to about I reckon well over 40 different languages.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, it's been quite nice. Coming from my own background, being a Yorta Yorta woman and with my own language, it's nice to see other languages and hear them as well. Not everyone in Australia is or anyone in the world is not as lucky to do that or get to experience that. So it's, I find myself quite lucky in that sense. And not only that, just getting to help people around the country is, one of my favourite things about the job. I like to help a lot.
Have you traveled around Australia much before you got this job? Because it sounds like you get to go everywhere.
Yeah, no, I didn't actually. So I was quite fortunate. I got offered the job at Living Languages and I haven't left. So, I must love something about it, which is everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. educational. It's, it's just as educational for me than it is for the participants that we deal with.
Yeah, I got chills when I heard you say like over 40 languages. Like, that's so beautiful that you get to.
I know. Well, Living Languages itself has worked with over 100 Indigenous languages of Australia. So it's probably not even a third of the languages of Australia, but, it's a big effort.
Yeah, no, that is a lot for sure. I was just about to ask, so how many are there in Australia? You kind of gave us a ballpark just with that. So,
well, I think there's been a number of different kind of theories on how many languages there are in Australia, and it kind of hard to pin it down, but there's around I think the last time I've kind of kept an eye on numbers is around over maybe 280 different languages, but also there's about 500 different dialects out of those language groups as well. So it's quite, yeah, it varies. It's huge number, but the efforts in Australia when it comes to language revitalisation and maintenance is just huge. It's a big focus, especially for the UN declared Year of Indigenous Languages of the world. So it's been a great year, and it's been nice to see some of the great stuff that's happening in Australia at the moment with language revitalisation and maintenance.
What else is going on besides Living Languages?
There's a few different things. So there is a conference in Australia called the Paluma Conference. It's a language and technologies forum and conference they have every 2 years here in Australia. It's international now. It was just national when it first started, but it's been around for quite a few years, and it's picked up a lot of momentum. So that was this year. So it was great to go there and see all the different projects that communities are doing around the country. And it really varies. It's from languages in schools to, just community language projects where the community are working with their own people to do stuff. There's also just research projects that are happening and documentation projects happening. It's all happening over here, which
That's so exciting.
I'm sure there is others happening around the world. But yeah, it's kind of great to see different things happening.
This might be like beyond your outside of your realm, but I'm just curious, like, what is the education system like? Are Indigenous languages taught at all in the classrooms?
Yeah. There's been a big push around the country for languages to be in schools. It is kind of out of my area, but we do work with a lot of teachers that are in schools already, or people that are really wanting to get the languages into the schools in their areas. Some places and some regions have more of an interest in having Indigenous languages in schools, and some places aren't. But, it's really has to come from the community, whether they want it in the school or not, I believe. And I'm happy to support community in whatever way they want to go with their language and how they put it out there.
What type of ages are you seeing when you go out into the community? What kind of is there a certain demographic you're seeing? Is there any sort of pattern?
Well, within our workshops, it's usually the older generation. But, some communities we go to, we get a lot of, we'll get some younger ones through too, really wanting to learn the language of their elders, and really just wanting to support their elders in getting their language out there and spoken by their community, or sharing it with the wider community as well. So it's usually older generations. And I guess that's why for our professional development workshop this year, we focus more on youth that are working on their languages in their communities. Just because we've had PD workshops in the past, and it's always been the older demographic coming through. And I guess over the last 4 years, we've seen, younger people wanting to get involved in language work, but not really sure how to. So yeah, we went through an expression of interest process for our workshop and put it out there to see who around the country would be interested to come along and join us for 4 days in Melbourne, just for an intensive workshop. Throughout our expression of interest process, we got them to identify the training skills or the skills they needed to get their projects up and running, or just to fill in the gaps that they needed to get their projects happening. So it was very intense 4 days, and they wanted absolutely everything that we could provide. So, we actually got it done. I was quite surprised and quite happy, actually. Yeah, our focus was immersion language teaching, but also a bit of linguistics, language project planning, language documentation. What else did we do? We also, public speaking was one of their interests as well. So we did a bit of training around public speaking, and then we put on a small public speaking event for them to just talk about themselves, their language work, their communities, and their passion for language. Which was really nice. Not all of them got up and spoke, but there was a few that had a go, and they were quite happy about it. So it was really just a really nice way to showcase them and the work they're doing and the work they were learning with us. But also just giving them the opportunity to talk to a small crowd to build their confidence in public speaking. So yeah, we covered quite a bit, but everyone was quite happy. So I was happy.
It seems like a good problem to have when they want to know everything. Yeah.
As a trainer, it's quite cool because you just want to give them everything.
Right. Yeah.
So
of course.
It's like that whole planning and shuffling things around to make sure you can provide everything for them. Yeah, because it was only a short time, and I would have loved to have the group back again just for just to fill in any other gaps, because I'm sure they would have went away and their minds would have been going overtime with thinking about all the possibilities they could do for their languages. So yeah, next year we're going to be doing another one. So our expression of interest process will start again soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah.
Do you have any sense of why in the last 4 years there's been an interest, like a uptick in interest by the youth?
I think, it's pretty hard to answer that question, actually.
Oh yeah, no, I just wonder if something is happening. Maybe the Australian government's being more supportive. There's more kind of structural changes, perhaps. Yeah,
and I think it just depends on each individual community, really, and language group. It's just some really do that whole intergenerational transfer of language and knowledge, and that's really strong still in some communities. So they get their young ones involved so they can continue the revitalisation or the maintenance of language in the future. Also, there's a lot of young people that really just want to help. They're very passionate about their people and their language, and they just want to be involved in any way they can. And some just, some situations there's just not many picking up the work due to lack of funding, I should say, in some communities. So it's just all about working together, no matter what age you are, and just provide, bringing your skills together to get what you really want or work towards what you really want.
So how did you become interested in language revitalization and maintenance?
My language revitalization journey started with me working in a primary school. One of our fluent speakers introduced a language program into one of the local primary schools here, and I started off as a helper in that class, also learning with the kids because I didn't grow up with my language. I've been learning it for the last 7 or so years. But I started in primary school as a helper. The fluent speaker at the time had to leave, So I stepped up and became one of the teachers for the class as well. So I was kind of I was in this situation where I was 2 steps ahead of the kids in my own language learning, but also teaching them as well. So, it was actually really good because it really helped me learn and retain my own language more than what I would have done if I was learning it by myself. So that was really helpful, but I ended up doing some training with Living Languages about 5 years ago, and the director at the time kind of, she rang me a couple of months after the training, and she offered me a job. So, I was very passionate about my own language, but then I was passionate about language all round. But the passion's just grown more and more since I've kind of picked up my own language and then started helping others around the country.
Well, and it also helps to have someone teaching you that is not so far removed from having learned themselves, because it's like sometimes people forget how hard something is.
Oh my God. Yes, they do. They do. And, I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves to, have certain, people have certain goals, but it's putting a lot of pressure on themselves to get to their goals, when I feel like people just need to step back sometimes and put themselves in uncomfortable situations when it comes to learning language, because, you have to immerse yourself in it. It's the only way you can learn a language properly, I feel. Letting things go a little bit.
Yeah, it's really rough. It's really hard, like, especially if you're the kind of person who wants to analyze everything all the time, like I do. Like, it's hard to just be like, let's just let this language wash over me and, like, absorb it like I would have as a child.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I'm exactly like that too. It's taken me 4 years to kind of slow myself down and stop looking at every little thing in the language. But, it's been a good learning curve for me.
Well, it's also so scary to be wrong for some people. Like, that's what my thing is. I don't like being wrong. And
I
so
know.
you have to be wrong when you're learning, right?
You do.
You're gonna be.
Yes, and I think people need to allow themselves to be wrong. You're not going to get everything right straight away, especially when you're starting from scratch learning a language. But yeah, I feel like even people outside of that learning of a language needs to, allow people to make mistakes as well.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
As a society, we tend to be very unforgiving of certain kinds of mistakes. And
yes.
yeah, we all need to be kinder to each other.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe
and to
so.
ourselves.
Yes,
And to ourselves, yes.
exactly.
Yeah. So I'm always interested in this kind of emotional part of a language and your connection to a language. And I wonder, so these youth that you, in the latest professional development workshop you did, most of them didn't speak the language, or growing up speak the language, right? Is that true? Or
Majority of them, yeah. There was 2 participants that grew up speaking their language and are quite fluent in their languages. So, the group was very varied. So we had two participants that come from strong speaking language communities, and the rest are kind of on a reclamation, revitalization situation with their languages. There was one language that is hardly spoken by anyone in the community. Some community members know a few words of the language and stuff, but that's really at a reclamation stage where they're trying to, gather all the language documentation that's happened on their language and try and piece the language together and rebuild it, and evolve it, because it hasn't been for so many years, which, is a huge job in itself. And, there are communities like that and are working in those situations in Australia today. I admire them because it's such a huge job, and it's going to take several years to get, to a stage they wanted to get it to. But, that's one situation. And then we've got a couple that have a few fluent speakers left, but it's all about getting all of their knowledge from them now while they can, and then, producing a language dictionary or producing some kind of grammar book or any kind of resource that community can use to revitalize the language. And then, there's community groups that are really just trying to build up speakers to pass on this knowledge and pass on the language to the rest of their community. So, yeah, it's quite varied here in Australia, but everyone's doing amazing stuff to just get their languages up and going and out there. So, yeah, it's nice to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you notice this I'm assuming I know the answer here, but do you notice how this very strong emotional connection that's driving the people that you work with?
Yeah, definitely. Because, languages here in Australia is the connection to our ancestors, It's very, very huge emotionally for certain people, if not everyone really, but it's our connection to land, it's our connection to the animals of the land, it's connection to our ancestors and our future generations as well. It's the thing that connects all of time, and everything in between. It's more, and people get quite emotional when they start their language journeys, and they really just don't know why sometimes, and it's just because it's so ingrained in us. Even if you're not strong in your language, your community has cultural knowledge, but and it's that cultural knowledge that keeps us together as a community, but also it instills the pride that we all feel for our own communities and our own language groups. It's just amazing watching people go through their journey, and I love watching someone start off, but I also love someone that's been on a language journey for 40 or 50 years. So but yeah, it's quite emotional. It's for some languages, they haven't been spoken for 150 years. And just hearing it again and hearing old recordings of ancestors, all of that in itself is quite emotional and quite confronting for some people as well, because it's just so special. It's really hard to explain, but yeah, it's very special for some people, and it's just that last little bit of trying to piece together who we are.
This is a question I've asked a number of Indigenous peoples, because I think it's important for, especially English speakers who are very much just mostly monolingual and just stuck in our own language and how we view the world. Is there a different way of viewing the world through your language in particular that is different from the way that you view the world when you're in English, speaking in English, or when monolingual speakers use English?
Yeah, being an English speaker first and foremost, it's I've really had to change my way of thinking. Even though I always have to kind of be in two minds when it comes to working with my own language, and I really, really need to step away from English and I guess that view on as an English speaker and how you see the world. I've had, I'm quite lucky. I was brought up around a lot of elders and stuff, so that cultural knowledge has been passed on. There's still heaps I need to learn. I'm only 30 years old and there's still heaps for me to learn. And I know this, and I am very patient, and I want as much as I can get. But yeah, with my own language work, it's having to keep the country and the animals and everything in mind when it comes to working with my own language. The language comes from the land and the animals. We didn't produce it ourselves. It comes from the sounds that we hear when we're on country. But yeah, with animals, for example, a lot of birds, their language names come from the sounds that they make. So, it's having to keep that in mind when you have several different words for one animal and you're like, oh, okay, which one is it? Or thinking about different species that might be on the country as well. So, there could be 3 words documented for crow, and then it's just trying to figure out, okay, do they belong to different clan groups? Are they for different species? And was this animal a totem for one of the clan groups within the nation as well? So, it's having to think outside the box a little bit. Well, when it comes from an English mind frame. Yeah, just having to think in several different ways about language and see it for what it is and how you think ancestors might have, spoken the language as well. So, yeah, definitely in two minds at all times when working with language. Yeah.
Oh, I hear that. Cool. And I think about how, like, so many, I would feel, it's just so beautiful because I feel like we would be so much better off if we all had this kind of, let's think about the animals and the ground that we're on and all of this. It would just be like, okay, we're all connected, and it would lead us to better choices. It feels like like we would be thinking beyond ourselves.
Yes,
which is important.
Yeah, the indigenous viewpoints across the world are much more embedded in their land, and it's definitely something lacking in my culture, at least.
Yeah, and in part of mine. So,
yeah. Yeah. So I feel that too. Like being in two worlds in Australia, it's kind of, you do see that a lot, It's like people, they get a sense of what Indigenous languages mean to the people of Australia, but at the same time, they just don't get their mind in the same mindset as us, and they just don't see it for what it really is, which is why it's so important to us,
And it seems to underscore why it would be so important to have this kind of community-driven way that you approach things, because you can't know a certain community's relationship with, say, water, unless you're in that community.
Yeah, exactly. I being, a Yorta Yorta woman and going to someone else's, country, or spending time with another language group, I definitely do not go in with, assumed kind of agenda on what they would want. That's the beauty of Indigenous languages, that they vary so much, depending on whether you're a language group that's on a coast and is a sea people versus a desert person versus a plains person versus a river person. So it's it's quite it varies a lot. There's shared words across the country, but at the end of the day, it's really, the language is really dependent on what kind of country you have, whether, and what kind of water source or what kind of animals you have, what kind of weather patterns you have. Like, it's everything. And it's very distinct to each area of the country, it belongs to in Australia.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that there were clan systems in Australia. That's a thing that exists in parts of North America for sure, like the Pacific Northwest in particular. So that's really interesting. So is this something that's shared across the country, or is it just different groups that have it, or?
I think it varies, across the country. Some really still have their clan systems, and some groups don't. So, and communities have made decisions on how they want to be represented or known as around the country. So it's really, really down to the people and how they want to be perceived or known as themselves. And some language groups have, several clans under the language, and they're all connected by the language, but yet they're different within their own clan system. So it's amazing. It's complex, but it's just absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So we have listeners from everywhere. I think most of them are from North America, but still,
no, that's not true at all.
Really?
Our second biggest country is Australia.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Oh, there you go.
Really? Which is another reason I was like, we really need to have a conversation like this.
I learn so much about everything and my own podcast on this show. So is it the U.S. and then Australia?
And then
over
Australia.
Canada? That's so
Canada's
embarrassing for you, Carrie.
Canada's like 5th or 6th. Like, I think You, the UK and France and maybe even Italy are above Canada.
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm like,
we have
my
a Canadian
home
here.
country is
That's so
letting me down.
embarrassing. Gosh.
You need to
Well,
start promoting.
Yeah, what's wrong with you? No. Actually, so this makes this question even more relevant then. Hi, Australia. Do you have, so some of our listeners are linguists, but most of them aren't. I don't know. I'm making assumptions again. Carrie, do you know?
I have no idea how many are linguists. Probably most, but not all for sure.
Well, at least like 99% of people aren't doing revitalization work. But I know that 100% of our listeners are caring people. Do you have any advice for us when we hear things like this? What can we do? Is there anything that we can do to promote Indigenous languages? Do you have any advice for us? We can donate to Living Languages, I bet.
Yeah,
Could
yes.
we?
Yes.
Okay.
Donations to Living Languages. Donations to Living Languages would be awesome. You know, we're very much government funded, but we are always looking at different ways to, you know, keep ourselves sustained in funding and money, just because, you know, it's really expensive to get some of the remote areas in Australia that we get to and we're asked to go to. So, you know, we can't always rely on government funding. You know, we all know that it's never, you know, forever. So, you know, it's just we're trying to find different ways to get people interested in language work around the country to help support these communities we work with. So, you know, funding to keep us going would be awesome. You know, every small donation helps in some way. But yeah, I guess every group, and I mean around the country, every Indigenous group would be different in what they want and what they need. So, you know, don't always assume that what one language group would want is what every language group would want. And I feel people sometimes just assume that we all need the same thing. No matter whether you're in Australia or New Zealand or Canada or whatever. Yes, we all have, you know, shared, like, I guess we all share some of the same struggles in our language work, but at the same time, they're totally different from one another. So I feel like people should really understand a language group for who they are and what they're trying to do, and just don't assume that we're all the same. But yeah, you know, I think all Indigenous groups would, you know, love some help with their language work, whether it's financially or, you know, whether it's pro bono work and you've got a skill that you think might help people. But, you know, don't force it on communities either, you know. Just ask, you know, or let people know what kind of skill you have and what you're willing to help out with and see if, you know, they might be interested. You know, not every language group in Australia, and I'm not sure about around the world, would get funding for their language projects. It's very, you know, it's very hard to pin down funding when there's so many different language groups trying to do different things. So it's just, yeah, seeing what's out there, seeing how people might need help and yeah, just putting yourself out there to see if you can help in any way.
Yeah, I think about that. And so you were mentioning earlier how some of your participants wanted to learn public speaking skills. And I'm like, well, that's like, you don't have to be a linguist or a lawyer or whatever to have public speaking, like be good at public speaking. Like, what if that's a skill you could offer or whatever?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I never thought about that before, but
yeah.
Yep.
Like writing skills is always good too.
Yeah.
People love writing stories in language. Publishers are always great for people to, you know, have connections with. There's, you know, various different things. So I'm sure if you've got a skill that you think might not be helpful for language work, I'm pretty sure you'd find yourself quite surprised on what people want and need.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it again seems to underscore why we need to support program or organizations like Living Languages, because you are going out and saying, this is your community, what do you need? You know, that's so important, because as linguists, I think Carrie and I can both say with certainty that linguists haven't always been great about this. So they have been quite terrible. So to have organizations that revolve around this kind of ethos is really important. To support.
How many people work for Living Languages?
We have 9 part-time staff. We're all part-time. The training team itself, there's only 4 of us. That's including our director of the training that we provide. So yeah, there's only 4 of us that go out and work with communities, and we get a bit stretched sometimes, but we try to help as many as we can in a year. But yeah, and then we've got our admin staff on top of that. So yeah, we're only a small organisation. We all work part-time, but we try to do as much as we can.
Well, I hope this gives you a little bit of a bump.
I hope
especially since we have so many listeners in Australia.
Now that you know that. I hope so too.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for talking with us about this great organization and sharing a little bit about your background too.
Yeah,
it's been great talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we always leave our listeners with, don't be an asshole.
Do not be an asshole.
Please don't be.
So this month, we would like to thank David Beltran, or David Beltran.
Hi, David. Yeah, I actually don't. Thank you so much. I don't know how. I'm guessing you might pronounce your name David, but I don't know. So
yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, hi, friend.
And Anatoly Vasilyev. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you. And if anyone wants to join us, we are $8 away from being able to pay for all transcriptions going forward. So you can join us at patreon.com/vocalfriespod.
And we really appreciate it. We appreciate every one of you.
Yes, we do.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by me, Carrie Gillen, for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at vocalfriespod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com, and our website is vocalfriespod.com.